We talk about structure and how organisations might coordinate themselves. And it's not complicated. You probably can't see, so I'll walk you through it. Here we have the customer in the middle. This is Virgin Group. 238 organisations around the world, different industries. You know, some flying aeroplanes, you saw some doing Virgin Brides. There's a whole motley crew of different industries and stuff like that. But they're all organised this way. There's the customer in the middle. The front line, the people who interact directly with the customer. Right? They're followed in turn by support, and then outer orbit, and then management. Now the reality that Virgin understand is that what's all this stuff about management truly understanding the customer? Why would we want that anyhow? Because they're not interfacing with the customer. So why do we spend an inordinate amount of time trying to kid ourselves that management could ever understand the customer, when that clearly is not a worthwhile objective to be? Because the people we need to understand the customer are these people in the front line. We need to give them the capability, them the resources, them the processes, them the systems, them everything that we need to make this work. Now these are the folks who can make that work by providing the resources through support. Support is human resources, technology and all the infrastructure things that we need. And then in this sort of outer orbit, we've got what they call stakeholders. And in Virgin Group, it depends on which part of the world you're in. That could either be the stockholders, the shareholders, or it could be governmental organisations that we're dealing with. It could be authorities, it could be regulators and so on. And that model is when you sort of say to Virgin, show us an organisational chart. That's what they're talking about. And the structure looks like that. You know, they could draw the chart on that. It doesn't look like a pyramid anymore. There's customs at the front line. What is all that about anyhow? You know, the Egyptians had it right, didn't they? But why are we still using that as a means of doing business? It doesn't make sense in terms of agility. Now, in some instances, like as I said, the security services, there might be a reason to really optimise that, because you need really good command and control to get messages to and from the front line. But for the vast majority of organisations, both public and private sector, it's just not a viable structure anymore if you need to be agile, if you need to be flexible, because it certainly isn't. Another one here looks similar, but the content's slightly different. Citigroup. And I'll talk a little bit about Citigroup sometime during the week in terms of slides and background. And again, they're the world's largest financial services company. So when people sort of say, oh yeah, you give examples, and you sort of, it's like a double-edged sword this. If you give examples of small little boutique companies, people say, well that's easy because they've got control over their own resources. You give examples of great big global successful organisations, and you say, well that's because they're a great big global successful organisation. But they weren't always that way. You know, they only got that way. Now what Citibank do is they have three core processes: generate business, ramp business, so in other words get it on the books, and keep it. So there's their customer, and then all their processes are arranged around the front line capability to do that. Supported management again, and then stake and shareholders. So a very, very similar model. Now, the wake-up call for Citibank really came, and I suppose I was part of the sort of victim of the thinking of the old ways at the time, was when we were working in the Global Technology Office, we would get sent off to go and do re-engineering projects around the world. And one particular re-engineering project was pretty extensive. It involved us visiting lots of countries over a period of 6 months. And we went to some very exotic places, and we had a jolly nice time. But it was serious, it was heavy work. If you know Citibank, they're a tough organisation to work with. And eventually we came back, and the presentation was arranged to the directors. So we covered the boardroom with our analysis of the processes around the world. And in the context of Citibank at the time, there was something like 3,500 different products, different financial service products. So we were very keen to get the message across that the business was very complicated, and in order to do any change, it needed to be sort of driven from the top. It needed to be really closely articulated and managed and implemented, because it involved so many different varieties of customer products and service and support. So we had a nice little PowerPoint presentation all geared up for that. The team were there, the team presented. About 20-25 minutes in, John Reid, who was the then Chief Executive Officer, sort of slapped the table, and sort of everything just silent in the room. You think, oh, this is a career buster. And we're all dead in the room now, because John obviously doesn't like the message that we're giving him. And Mr. Reid said, look, I know you guys have done a ton of work here. You've travelled around and you've exhausted, lots of people in terms of getting all this information. It looks very jolly good and jolly interesting. But the reality is from a business model point of view, we get money in, we move it around, and we give it out. That's all we do. Everything else is just window dressing. Now go away and figure for me a set of process architectures that do that for me. Get money in, move it around, and give it out. And within sort of 6 months, Citibank transited from 3,500 products to just over 300. Right. Now that improvement in terms of agility from where they were, by thinking through, in the context of the SEO, getting money in, moving it around, and giving it out, everything falls into one of those 3 buckets. If it doesn't, stop doing it. Because it's superfluous to the actual achievement of that SEO. And on the back of that, Citibank beat back the Japanese firm, as was around at the time, and subsequently have gone on, they're the major player in financial services around the world. They've got the latest ventures to acquire something like a 20% share in a Chinese bank. They're not able to acquire a bigger share because there's certain laws in China that prohibit any outsiders getting into the sort of country in that sort of way. So what they've done is acquired an Hong Kong bank, who've now acquired a share in a mainland Chinese bank, because they want to play in the future. They don't want to get subsumed, as many other organisations will do, as their sort of definite saying. But they do it on this basis. So the people who tend to get remunerated most in those structures are where? In the front line. You think what that would do to your business model. No, we can't do that. We climb up the greasy pole so we get more money and more vacation time and more perks. What you say to me is that the people who actually deal with the customer are the people who are actually earning the most money in the organisation. Well, that would be a complete revelation to us. And it's a big, big challenge, because it's not the way we're normally used to doing stuff.